Oh, hey everyone, it's Emily, and I'm finally getting a chance to film my favorite books of 2020 video. And I had such a good reading year, honestly. I read so many books that I absolutely adored. So it was really hard to think about a list and narrow it down a bit. I narrowed it down to 15 things. I'm including series as one entry in this list, but I have 15 things, so I'm not going to go too into depth about them because otherwise that would just be a really long video. So I'll talk about them a little bit, but I've talked about most of these quite a lot over the past year, so hopefully it's okay if I just kind of give a little bit of discussion of each one and why I love them. So, and these aren't going to be in any particular order. I don't necessarily star rate my books, so I can't have a really clear number way to delineate between them, and honestly it's just very hard because some of these are so different. It's really hard to compare different genres, different age ranges. It's just kind of hard for me to really make a definitive list of I love this, you know, adult fantasy, epic fantasy more than this middle grade novel, or vice versa. So these aren't in any particular order. These are kind of vaguely in the order that I read them this year, but not even specifically in this exact order I read them this year. This is just a list of the ones that stood out to me. So without further ado, let's get into it. First thing I want to talk about is the Deva Bod Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. This is A City of Brass, Kingdom of Copper, and Empire of Gold. I absolutely loved this series. It started out strong and I think only got better and better as the series went on. And this series follows Nari, who is a con woman in 1800s Egypt, and she has abilities with language and healing that she doesn't quite understand. She doesn't really know much about her past at all. She's kind of on her own, and so she does have some healing abilities, but she still is a con woman in the sense of she will claim to understand what people need in terms of their health and then send them to an apothecary down the road, and then the apothecary owner will split some of the proceeds with her. And she also frequently does different healing ceremonies or rituals, and when she's in one of these rituals she accidentally summons a Gen warrior, as one does, and they need to go to the City of Brass, Deva Bod, and she gets caught up in the politics that's going on. There are a bunch of different Gen groups, there are Ifrits in this world, there are a whole bunch of groups going on or that are a part of this world, and she's really caught up in the politics that's happening and realizes that the history that she never really knew much about is very tied to this city and what's going on there. So she finds out more about herself and ultimately is trying to kind of help heal some of the divisions between different groups. It's absolutely fantastic. I love the characters. So I don't love some of the romantic elements towards the beginning, but I like them more as the series progresses, I guess I'll say. Not my favorite part of the series, but the characters are a standout. The setting is absolutely wonderful. I love this world so much. I love almost everything about this series. It's absolutely wonderful. The next series I want to talk about is the Darker Shade of Magic series. And this one was just fun. This one was just super fun and entertaining for me. And this one is by V.E. Schwab, and it follows Kel, and he can travel between 4 different parallel Londons that have different levels of magic. And he sometimes smuggles things in between these different Londons, and one time accidentally smuggles something and realizes that he smuggled something that was far more powerful than he originally thought, and kind of gets in over his head, and once again gets kind of swept up in a lot of different stuff that's going on between these different Londons and magical forces that are starting to take shape. There's magical competition. I absolutely adore Delilah Bard. She's just a fun, feisty character, and it's just a fun world. Like, I just had such an entertaining time reading this series. There are a couple of ships that I really like in here, and so just, yeah, I don't know. I had such a good time reading this one. The next one is The Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. And this one follows Laszlo, who is a librarian, and he is obsessed with the lost city of Weep. He is the only one in this world that kind of remembers that this lost city of Weep had another name at one point and had a history that they knew a lot about, but people have kind of forgotten about it. And he's the only one that really kind of sort of remembers something, and he is obsessed with trying to find out more and figure out what it is about this city that he feels he's supposed to find out. And at one point there's an envoy that comes from this city, and they haven't had contact with this city in a long time, which is part of why they've just kind of forgotten about it. And an envoy comes from this city asking for help, and Laszlo is able to join this envoy going back to the city to hopefully help them. And you know, it opens up from there. It gets a lot weirder from there, but in a wonderful Laini Taylor style. And Laszlo is ultimately trying to help the people of the city of Weep. So it was her writing is just fantastical and super whimsical, and there's just something about it that really captures me, and I really enjoyed the characters. I don't love the romantic elements in this one as much as some people do, but it was fine. It didn't detract from the series for me. I also listened to this one on audio, and Steve West narrates, which was just great. So I absolutely had a fun time with this one. The next one is the Graceland Realm series by Kristen Kishore. I loved Graceland so much, and also had such a fun time with Fire and Bitter Blue, which are the next two books in the series. So this is a kind of a companion series. So you follow Katza in Graceland, who is dealing with a bunch of politics. So it's kind of an old school feeling fantasy world, and you know, with princes and castles and stuff. And she has so in this world there are people who have different graces or abilities, and hers is killing. So she has served as a spy of sorts for her uncle, who's the king. And you know, so that she gets caught up in a lot of politics, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And Fire follows a different part of the world, and Bitter Blue kind of takes it back to Katz's part of the world, but a little bit later, and kind of sort of ties in the events of the first two, but is also kind of its own story. So it's kind of good to read them in order, but they do each stand on their own as just really fun and unique stories. I absolutely love the writing. I absolutely love the characters. The worlds are just so much fun. So I had a blast with that one. The next one is another fantasy series. And that's the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson, the first area Mistborn series. And this one follows Ven and Kelsier. And it follows a world where you can ingest metals and use that for magic or for power. And if you can ingest one type of metal and use it, then you're a Mistine or Mistling. Which is it? I forget if it's Mistine or Mistling. Anyway, and if you can ingest all the kinds of metal in this world and use them for power, then you're a Mistborn. Ven and Kelsier are Mistborns, and they're trying to there's a Dark Lord that's been ruling for 1,000 years, and the rebellion, or the people who are trying to resist this Dark Lord, have kind of throughout time risen up at some points and not in others, and they're trying to keep hope alive that they can resist this Dark Lord. And so they're trying to get a resistance rekindled, essentially. And the world is fascinating. I absolutely love Ven and Kelsier and the crew that they put together and that they're a part of. And oh my god. And then this whole series just opens up a ton and goes amazing places. And I had a fun time reading each and every one of the books in this series. The characters, I think, are what really sticks with me. And the world is so brutal, but also so fascinating. And the politics in there is super interesting. Religion comes into play in very interesting ways in this series. So yeah, definitely a great one. But for a change of pace, the next one is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is a adult romance, and this one follows Emily, who her sister was in a car accident, and she recently, her boyfriend recently broke up with her, or she recently broke up with her boyfriend, who was kind of a shitty person. And she's just kind of in a crossroads in her life, and after her sister's accident she moves in with her sister just to help her sister out a bit, help her with her daughter. So she's hanging out with her niece and her sister, just trying to figure her life out. And her niece wants to take part in a Renaissance fair. In order to do that, she needs an adult chaperone, so Emily volunteers to be the tavern wench at this Renaissance fair, and at first doesn't really get along with the person who is running the fair, who also plays a role as a pirate in this fair, but their characters have a flirtation thing going on, and so that kind of crosses over into real life, and it's just super cute. I love the writing. I listened to this one on audio as well, and Brittany Presley did a perfect job capturing these characters. And it was just super fun. The writing was fantastic. I really, really loved the characters. And I think she did great character work here. I actually really cared about these two individually and as a couple, and I think she just built it up really, really well. And, you know, their motivations were very understandable. They actually acted their age, which is great. And super, super fantastic adult romance. The next one, for a completely different pace as well, is the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. So I've read the first two. I have not read Hollow Pucks yet, but I have read Nevermore and Wondersmith, and these are the best middle grades I read all year. I absolutely adored these. These are perfection. This one follows Morgan Crow, who is a girl who is cursed and blamed for everything bad that happens in her town. And she is cursed to die on her 11th birthday. And on the night that's supposed to be her last night, she is rescued by Jupiter North and whisked away to the magical world of Nevermore, where she is invited to take part in a competition to see if she can become part of the Wondrous Society. The world is super whimsical and charming. I absolutely love the hotel that she lives in. The Hotel Dracadian. So great. The characters are super quirky and memorable. Morgan is a great feisty character who, you know, has her flaws but also learns and grows a lot over the series. And I love the group that she's a part of. I love Jupiter North. I love everything about this series. It's the most just charming, delightful story that will hug your heart. The next one is the only novella on this list, and it's a sci-fi novella by Becky Chambers, and that is To Be Taught If Fortunate. This is another thing that I listened to on audio and was narrated by Brittany Presley. And I adore Becky Chambers. The Wayfarer series is absolute gold, and I'm very excited for the next in the Wayfarer series to come out next month. And anyway, so this is her novella, and it really just follows a group of astronauts who are kind of on a long-term mission to explore other planets. And it's really just about their life and the things that they learn and the things that they go through. And she packed a lot into a short novella, and I don't know, it's hard to describe. I mean, you can kind of give the basic premise and really not get a sense of why this novella is so incredible. She really lets you get into the head of this group, and you very quickly come to feel like you really know and understand and care about what they go through and what their struggles are, what their triumphs are, what they're learning throughout this process. It's incredible. So, would recommend if you are looking for a character-driven sci-fi novella. The next one is The House in the Cerulean Sea, and this one follows Linus, who works for a government agency whose goal is to protect magical youth who are in orphanages. And so Linus is a caseworker for this government agency. He gets a special assignment to go look at this special orphanage for magical youth and make sure that it's being run well, that the kids are happy and taken care of. And so he goes to this house that's by a cerulean sea. and he gets to know the kids, he gets to know the person who runs this orphanage, and really just comes to appreciate these kids, appreciate and love the person who runs this orphanage and the people who live on this island. He comes to understand what the discrimination that magical youth face through interactions that he has with people in a town nearby. So he's really just coming to understand the kids, understand that there's really more to the story than he originally thought, and that he needs to question quite a few things about how he lives his life and what he wants out of life. And it's just the most delightful, charming story, and I had a smile on my face the entire time. It's so sweet and cute, and just, yeah, as I said, it's just charming. And if you just want a book that'll make you smile and feel good, House in the Cerulean Sea. The next book I want to talk about is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and this book follows a magical competition, and the venue for this competition is a circus that is only open at night. There's no warning for when, or I say when, it's open at night, but there's no warning for where this circus is going to be. It just opens at sundown, closes at sunrise, and then who knows where it's going to be next. And there's not really warning, but people love this night circus. And so there are two magicians, and they're kind of locked in this competition, and this competition aspect is kind of vague and not terribly well described, but the venue for them dueling it out is in this night circus. And the two that are in this competition also kind of end up falling for each other, and the plot isn't necessarily what I love this story for. There are some things that are just kind of difficult to explain and just kind of weird, but the writing is what this is all about. The writing is super whimsical and lyrical and absolutely astoundingly gorgeous. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the setting, like the setting and the atmosphere. This book was a vibe, and it was the perfect vibe for the fall, which is when I read it. And that vibe and that atmosphere and the writing and the whimsy was exactly what I wanted out of this book, and that was exactly what I got. I also adored The Starless Sea, which I read in January, I believe, in 2020. But I think I love The Night Circus even more, and it was just such a comforting, I can't even explain why, but just, it was so comforting. And it's definitely a book that I'm going to want to return to. I also listened to this one on audio, and Jim Dale, perfect narrator for this. And the next one I want to talk about is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This one follows Addie LaRue, who wanted to essentially gain her freedom and not kind of be able to leave a marriage that she was being forced into. She is alive in early 1700s France, and so it was pretty common to be forced into marriages like this, and she didn't want it. She wanted her freedom. So she makes a deal with a devil of the dark, if you will, or whatever. She makes a deal with a dark creature that gains her freedom, but the cost of this that she doesn't realize is that no one will actually remember meeting her, and she's immortal. And so you follow her. It flashes back and forth from 1700s France to 2014 in New York City, and so it follows her in the present day, and also when she originally made this deal. In the present day, she actually finds someone in a bookshop who remembers her coming in the second time and remembers who she is and remembers her face, and it's the first time in 300 years that she's actually been remembered, and so she's trying to figure out why this person remembers her. And then so you're flashing back to when she made the deal, when she meets this person who remembers her, and you kind of follow different points throughout that 300 years that really show what her life has been like. And it's a weird book, but the writing is absolutely gorgeous. The character work is really, really great in this one. And it was just a feeling throughout this entire thing that just kept me riveted. It's not necessarily, again, a super plot-based book that has, a bunch of interesting, fast-paced stuff going on, but it's just a character character piece about Addie LaRue, and really just wanting to be remembered, and an ode to wanting to leave a mark on the world that makes the world better. And, you know, with Addie literally not being able to do that. And it was interesting. It was great. It was emotional. The writing was fantastic. The characters were great. So I absolutely adored this one. The next one I want to talk about is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and this one follows a woman named Nora, and trigger warning for suicide attempt, suicidal ideation, depression, and you go through Nora's last day before she ultimately decides to commit suicide. She thinks she is dead and ends up, or she sees this building. Turns out it is the Midnight Library. And she gets to explore other lives that she could have lived if she made different decisions. So I think the concept is absolutely fascinating, and I think the execution was really great as well. So this book really explores, you know, whether or not you would be happier or live a better life if you made different decisions. It's easy to think if you make a different decision that your life would be better and happier, and you know, that may or may not be the case. This book also just touches on kind of remembering the impact that you have on other people, and recognizing the impact that you have on other people even if you don't necessarily see it yourself. Anyway, it was a lovely book. I really enjoyed the writing, enjoyed the concept, and I enjoyed just exploring Nora's other lives and her learning things that she needed to learn along the way, and it was great. The next one I want to mention is the Farseer Trilogy by Robin Hobb. This one follows Fitz, who is the bastard son of the king in waiting. He is dropped back off at the palace when he's 6 years old, and his father abdicates and basically just leaves town. And the king, who is still king, or still in power, ultimately wants Fitz to be trained as an assassin. And so you start when he's 6 years old. He's kind of growing up, going through some of this training. It's a very slow moving series, character driven series, and you follow him from the time he's super young, getting trained, starting to get into the politics of this world, and then getting more and more involved in the politics of this world. And the characters are just fantastic. I absolutely loved just following this world. The world is just, it's such a comfort for me now. I spent so much time in this world that at this point it's just comforting for me to think about this world, even though brutal things happen to poor Fitz and the people that he loves. I really felt anchored in this world and wanted to see what was going on and wanted to see what would happen, and had such a fun time with this one. Again, very slow moving series, so if super action based ones, high fantasy series are what you go for, might not be for you, but I had a great time with this one. The next book I want to talk about is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is the next Brandon Sanderson on this list. There's a lot of Sanderson that happened this year. I absolutely adored Warbreaker. This one follows two sisters. The older sister has been trained her entire life to engage in a political marriage, or be ready for a political marriage. And at the last minute, her father decides that he's going to send the younger sister instead. And so the younger sister needs to figure out what's going on and basically be thrust into this political marriage, and she has no idea about the court politics that are going on in this world, no idea about what she's supposed to do, because she's had none of the training that her sister has. And her older sister is trying to go and rescue her younger sister and realizes that things are just much more complicated than she thought or that she was ever trained for. And it follows them figuring out what's going on. It follows the court of the group that the younger sister is going to marry into. It follows the court, and you follow one of the gods on this court who is absolutely hysterical and also is trying to figure out what's going on. And it's great. Lightsong is hilarious, and this one was just a really funny but also just very intriguing, fast-paced Brandon Sanderson. It's his classic, just fantastic but easy to get into writing style. It was so great. It was fantastic. I love the characters. The world was super interesting, and I just was constantly wondering what was going to happen next. So the final book I'm going to talk about is the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. I finally started the Broken Earth trilogy late this year and absolutely loved it. It took me a minute to get into, but I absolutely adored this book. Once I was into it, I was there, you know? And this one follows a world where there are a bunch of apocalyptic events that happen, and there are people who have the ability to help control these events, but their power is very feared because they have the ability to help control these things, but they can also help cause some of these. So it's, you know, tremors, plate tectonics moving, tsunamis happening, volcanoes erupting, that kind of stuff. And these people also have the ability to make some of those things happen, just as they have the ability to help control and prevent some of those things from happening. So they're very feared. You follow a young girl who's has this ability and is starting to come into her power. She goes to a school where essentially they're trained in these abilities. You follow someone who works for, that organization is called the Fulcrum, that trains and is kind of an organization dedicated to the people with these abilities. And so you follow someone who works for the Fulcrum, who goes to different parts of this world to help control things that need to be controlled. And she's finding out a lot about the world. There's a lot going on that more than she realized. There's stuff going on with a mysterious obelisk that's there. You also follow a mother whose husband kidnapped their daughter and murdered their son. So she's trying to find him. So you also travel through the world through her perspective. A couple of people join her along the way who end up being very important to her and to the story. And so it's kind of hard to describe. The writing is fantastic. The world is just so intriguing. I was just riveted. I was absolutely riveted and wondering, again, what the heck would happen next. And I'm very intrigued to keep going in this series and just keep experiencing N.K. Jemisin's writing and experience this world. So I had a great time with that one. So maybe I shouldn't have done 15, because even with me trying to keep it short, that still felt like it took a long time. We'll see how long this video actually ends up being. But thank you so much for watching. Let me know what your favorite books of the year were. Let me know if you read any of these, and yeah, let me know your reactions to this list. I would love to talk about it, and be sure to subscribe for more bookish content. I'll be sure to link my Twitter and Instagram down below. That's where I like to hang out. I will also link more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.